For the next panel, I would like to invite Avantika Bhuyan, who is the National Features Editor at the Mint Launch. She has been an independent features writer with words at Launch, Vogue India, Sunday Economic Times, The Architectural Digest, The Hindu, and more and more. Her focus areas are art, fashion, food, films, news, features. So I leave the stage for her to take it from here. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I can't say welcome back. Thank you for staying on. And thanks, Charmaine, for continuing on the panel. We continue the discussion on fine-grained heritage. And as part of this panel, we will also continue discussing the presentations and papers which made it to the shortlist of the ICA Writing Prize. So without further ado, if I could call Suraj Gogoi on stage, please. Suraj teaches sociology at the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences at RV University, and his research interests lie at the intersection of law, food, citizenship, violence, and the state. And Suraj's writings regularly make it to national and international media. So welcome, Suraj. Then we have Santa Nibedita, if I could call Santa to stage. She's a filmmaker and a grassroots practitioner. And in the last 5 years, she's worked with over 20,000 women farmers across themes of agriculture, livelihood, and gender. Welcome to the panel. Then we have Rubeka Idrishi. She is a PhD scholar at IIT Guwahati, and she works on agriculture and food processing technology. And some of the focus areas include rural development, fortification, food policy, and more. Welcome. And so I would actually like to open the panel with a line from Suraj's presentation, in which he writes that rice is many things. And I think that encapsulates this discussion really well, because we're not just looking at rice as sustenance, but we're looking at rice as offering, as resistance, as markers of identity. And just what the relationship, the intrinsic relationship between the community that produces, the community that consumes, and the produce itself. So we have 3 papers as part of this presentation, and one of which looks at how rice should not be looked at in isolation, but is a sum of the migratory histories of a community. And then there is another one that looks at the black rice from Assam and Manipur, and also looks at the black rice as a space of innovation. And we have the third paper, which looks at how rice plays a pivotal role in a community's cultural fabric through its rituals, through its medicine. I think you will find some interesting threads between the previous presentations and this one. There will be similar communities that might be talked about, but in a different facet. And we look at different ways of looking at history and making them accessible to the common man. So without wasting any more time, if I could ask Suraj to start with this presentation, please.
First of all, thank you, ICA, for having me here. So my topic is, as you can see here, it is about a rice variety that is found in, or grown rather currently in Arunachal Pradesh, which is in the easternmost part of India. A map which shows exactly where this place I'm talking about in Arunachal falls. So if you look at the right side of the panel, you'd see the blue, river basically, crisscrossing the geography. So the easternmost side, where there is almost like a Y, that zone is where I'm talking about. What I wanted to sort of focus in this paper is I was quite struck by the fact that how this particular rice was described to apply for the GI status, right? A GI tag. Now, it sort of describes in its application that it is grown only in this part of the country, which is in Arunachal Pradesh, and it really sort of baffled me because one very simple thing, this variety of rice was brought by the Khamti tribe who cultivates this rice in the 17th century when they migrated from Burma. So one, it is not from Arunachal. Two, it has been sort of preserved through a very particular kind of technique of cultivation. So if you divide, for instance, wet rice, what we know as wet rice irrigated cultivation, as opposed to wet rice rain-fed cultivation, the differences are actually quite extreme in terms of the quality of rice. So my parents are farmers, and they did grow the rice that we are talking about, khao tai or khamti lahi as we call. Now this word lahi in Assamese, it means any kind of small grain rice that is harvested in the month of December. So it's a generic name. Now, many people in my sort of part of Assam, which is kind of the foothills of the Himalayas, so it's beginning of the plains, but not entirely, would usually grow this rice by using, rain-fed kind of irrigation, but it wouldn't be as good as the rice that you get from this group of people who cultivate a little higher up in the kind of areas in Arunachal. So then, that was also a kind of curiosity for me to look up and see for my research. So I went and for field work, and I'm not sure why it's not changing. Okay, so that's me sort of spending about 4 months with this family who is also a relative from my maternal side. This picture is from 2012. And here you can see whom I call as Gogoi auntie. So she's seen making steam rice. So below you see a pot which is filled with water, and then a wet cloth would be wrapped around so that the steam does not escape between the two pots. And then the rice is placed on top, which is soaked for some period, and then the steam slowly cooks it, and you keep adding a little bit of water from on top so that it doesn't dry out too much. That will make the cooked steam grain a little hard, right? Now I'm familiar with this technique because my mom does this the same with a different grain of rice, of course, to make rice wine. So you take out this steam rice and then you ferment the rice and keep it, and that's a different process. But nonetheless, I was used to this process of making rice. But that we do only for brewing alcohol, but not on an everyday basis. And but they do this on an everyday basis. And the way you kind of end up wrapping the rice also is known very differently. So you can use different kinds of leaves. The most usual one is the banana leaf, of course. So you wrap the steam rice in the shape of a ball. And that is the usual kind of way of wrapping, which also is kind of intended, one, to leave some, essence of the leaf into the warm steamed rice. But at the same time, you can open the leaf and then eat on that leaf as well. Which is, as I said, the first kind of shape is round in appearance. The next type, which they do, which is kind of preserved for a while, or maybe 1 or 2 days, it's like they make pancakes. So they would wrap it usually in a rectangular form, with a different kind of leaf. I actually don't know the scientific name for it. We call it torapat in Assamese. I think Tanushri can help me with that. So that is kind of a pancake version, which is can be mixed with other things like black sesame to have, as a snack with food, with tea and so on. The third kind, which is my favorite, the picture on the right side is different. I'll explain what that is. But on the left, you see rice being cooked inside a bamboo, right? A raw bamboo. That is me cooking in my mom's kitchen at home, so that's not from the field. But I didn't have a picture because, as I said, it was 2012. I couldn't retrieve most of the photos. Nonetheless, but they have a very different way of. They don't just insert it in the bamboo and start cooking it. They soak the rice inside the bamboo overnight, and then they cook it the next day or after a couple of hours. The leaf that you sort of cover on the top so that the steam doesn't escape, again, can be different depending on what kind of flavor you want in it. This is one, the third type in which this particular rice is consumed. Now, I just added the other picture because when we talk of Khamtis as a tribe in Arunachal, we also often speak about, and this is what also the kind of colonial archive tells us, that they smoke opium very often. So those are actually smoking pipes which would be kept in the kitchen. And if you actually see this other person he is smoking there. So this is how usually the day starts in the morning. They start cooking and they start smoking. As you can see, the division of labor is very clear. Now, back to the kind of comment I was making. I was quite baffled to read actually the application of for GI of Khamti rice, because it erases a lot of their history of migration. Now, Khamti's history in this current location in Arunachal is not more than 270 years. Roughly in 1839, that's where the colonial archive puts it, them settling down there and sort of cultivating. Now, as I was trying to tell you, that there are two types of cultivating wet rice, which is one is irrigated wet rice, which we'll see in the next slide, and the other is rain-fed. So this is a picture of a rain-fed Khamti rice field, which is after harvesting. This picture is from my recent field work in just before COVID, 2020, January. And again, the time matters because, as I said, Lahi, the word means generically any small grain rice in Assam which is harvested in December. A demo of a rice field that one of my interlocutors who you saw in the picture was sitting behind helped me to make. Now, as I was telling you, the Khamti rice fields are primarily irrigated wet rice cultivation. And they also do fish cultivation along with rice, like the Apatanis in other parts, in the Subansiri area of Arunachal. So it's very interesting. So you can see in this, the main stream of the river, right? The arc you see on the top of the picture is the main channel of the river, right? And then these sort of streams are cut just before where they kind of dam the river to let it inside to the paddy fields. And there are these sort of husking machines which are connected to the turbine. So there can be like 20 husking machines at once, which is sort of operated by the flow of the river. And then the water is led to the field, right? Now, depending on the distance from the main source of the river, the temperature of the water is different. So, as you can imagine, the nearer parts of the field that is close to the river, the water will be colder than, far away, which would be warmer, right? Fresh water. Now they have different varieties of Khamti Lahi rice that is cultivated in cold water as opposed to hot water, warmer water, and so on. So that is something was very fascinating for me to learn because I grew up learning that there's just one variety of rice which I love to have. So this was what I found in the field. And this actually takes back to an enormous agrarian history in Southeast Asia. Now, Khamtis belong to the larger Shan family or the Thai family, who were Buddhist, Theravadi Buddhist, and if you cultivated wet rice, irrigated cultivation in Southeast Asia, it meant that you had some affinity to the Shans. If you did take up historically rain-fed agriculture, it meant that you belonged to different groups, and it also meant that you did not have any allegiance to the states that controlled water, right? Because control of water was linked to control of communities. So as long as you accepted that, you were sort of accepting also the feudal system, right? Hence, I'll just cut it short here and conclude by saying that, as I was trying to tell you, I was quite surprised the kind of things they submitted for the GI tag, which also included blaming migrants, like the Bangladeshi question that you see in terms of citizenship. That also appeared in the GI tag application, which said that there are non-tribal people migrating and populating the place and so on, which is absolutely unnecessary in that place. Even without it, it has its problems. The other that I have a problem with fundamentally is, as we were talking about exoticizing things, both material culture as well as people, right? You tend to see things that are indigenous, things as tribal people in general to be quote-unquote exotic. And this problem goes both ways, I suppose. It's not just about others identifying you as an exotic person, thing, and so on, but it's also us actually projecting this kind of exoticism. You often see it in, Northeast, quote-unquote, Northeast festivals around the country, and ethnic festivals where we try to say that, okay, this is just here, right? And as Tanushri was pointing out, that as anthropologists, sociologists, and historians, we rely a lot on language, and the memory of language serves us to correct a lot of things. And the very fact that we call rice as bhat in almost so many places in the country talks about the kind of flow of things and not fixity of things. The first fundamental problem with something like GI is that it erases all memory of travel and the stories, the plurality of things. And I mean, Khamti rice is not an exception. This extends to any kind of commodity that you are trying to give that tag, because the moment you fix it, you create a problem, basically. And that, as I said, is sort of, if material culture is fixed and exoticized, so are you, right? And lastly, and I would like to sort of end here with sort of paraphrasing an anthropologist, Levi Strauss, who would say that food is both good to think and good to eat. Rice is, of course. But at the same time, what I want to remind myself and everyone is that when we talk about these cultural artifacts, it's very important to unpack the kind of intersections of history, be it gender, be it questions of the state-making process, and your own histories of migration are essentially webbed into performing culture and practicing culture, and we ought not to forget that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Suraj. That was really insightful also because it was a very layered presentation in terms of moving from personal to a broader history. I would like to invite Rubeka now to talk about the black rice of Assam and Manipur.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. So I am a PhD scholar at IIT Guwahati, and I'm from Delhi only, but I'm working for my PhD there, and I'm extensively working on the pigmented rice of Northeast India, specifically the black rice of Manipur and Assam. So we are talking about rice of Manipur and Assam here because the Manipur black rice has been talked in literature and all, and it is also GI tagged. I've got few sample with me if you can circulate. And I've got one Chakao Poriton which is GI tagged, and along with that there is extract of that which is studied for so many applications, so many health benefits in various literature forms. But when we talk about the Assam black rice in Northeast Indian scenario, Assam black rice is at the second position in terms of production, but the farmers themselves are still unaware of what variety they are growing, or they just simply call it Kala Saul. But when we talk about the Manipur farmers, they are pretty well aware about what variety they are growing. So I am doing a few parts of my research has been done already, and few parts I'll be doing to reveal whether it has actually come from Assam, from Manipur, or it is originally from Assam itself. So when we talk about the introduction of the black rice, the major black rice producing countries are China, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and we are at 4th position, India. So we grow around 5.1% of black rice in India, and the major contributors of black rice production is Manipur first, and then followed by Assam and other states of Northeast. And other states like Orissa or Tamil Nadu also grows black rice, but different varieties of it, like Kalabati or Kavuni in Tamil Nadu. But here if we see that 90% of the rice overall, this is not pigmented rice or not white rice, this is 95% of the total rice is cultivated in Asia, out of which the 40,000, ma'am presented, I guess she said around 60,000, but as per the latest data, it has come down to 40,000 varieties right now. Out of which 200 types of pigmented rice and black rice are there in the world, and we hold, in India, we have approximately 30 accessions, out of which many are found in Northeast India. And they have been also known for many chemical compounds, and out of which is mainly is the anthocyanin. I've also got the extracted extracts with me, so if it will be circulated, please give it a look. It is the extraction of the pigments, which is the major principal compound of it is anthocyanin, which is reported to have many kinds of health benefits. For example, it is also it also helps in curing the lifestyle diseases, also in maintaining the blood stasis and all. So there are so in this map we can see that there are many kinds of pigmented rice. This map actually shows you all kinds of pigmented rice found in the Indian map as per the latest literature and all. So we see that the Kerala have around 50 kind of pigmented rice, followed up by Assam and Manipur and other states. In UP and Bihar, the pigmented rice cultivation is still in the trial stages. They are trying to grow, and they have come up with their own few varieties. And the major challenges when we talk about the northeastern black rice scenario is the land specificity. I myself tried to grow in one of the farms or in my campus the seeds which were from Manipur, and it didn't grow. After a certain point of time, it grew till around a feet, but after that it didn't give the fruits, the seeds of the rice. So, and the second reason is the disrupted value chain, the market players and the value chain, all the market players from the farm to the fork is not integrated. And there is lack of awareness. As I said, they are not aware of the variety they are growing, especially Assam farmers. And when we come to the effect of altitude and agroecology also affects the chemical composition of the rice. And there are rare cultivation practices which is followed in Manipur, and when they are followed in Assam, the variety also different. The variety also gives a difference. And also the seed preservation and grain storage techniques, we need to have more of these, because my rice myself, when I store it in bags, of cloth bags, and when I keep it just like that, it goes bad just in 3 months. So just in 3 months, it gets weevils. So, but when we talk about the opportunities, there are many which we can work upon. There is one step which is the value chain and integration. We can also do the seed variety improvement and all. We can also increase the awareness amongst the farmers and all the players of the value chain. And the research and development part can also contribute to bringing the black rice to the mainstream or to the shelf of the markets as well. Because we all know that we can get that in marts, but not in the stores, and it is not on the plate of every person. Either you can get it in the 5-star restaurants, or you can get it in the local farmer's house in Northeast India. Also, the preservation of the traditional cultivation practices is also very important, because to know this traditional practices and to preserve it in a way that they want it, that is also very necessary, because otherwise you will not get the quality of the rice we want to grow in different parts of India as well. And the traditional protection of traditional and socio-cultural practices is also important. So if we see about the nutritional quality of black rice of Assam and Manipur with respect to the brown and white rice, we see that although it is giving almost the same energy, but the protein content is higher, the carbohydrate content is lower. And when we talk about the fat content, because the pigmented rice tends to have a more waxier side, they are little more in the fat content. And if we talk about the anthocyanin, which is the main layer of the black rice, which segregates the black rice from black to other white rices, right? If we will polish the rice, the black rice or the pigmented rice, it will give you the same rice, the white rice. So that's why the layer which is important, the anthocyanin layer, that is the most important, the coveted factor of the black rice. So if we talk about total polyphenol and total anthocyanin, you see it is completely not there in white and brown rice, which makes all the difference. So this is this is my work done, which has recently been published, and this is I collected various samples from all over Assam and Manipur, and I compared them. The Manipur sample, which is the GI tagged samples, I compared them with the Assam varieties. With my study, I just wanted to showcase that where the Assam variety stands in terms of present scenario of pigmented rice. So we see that this is the current publication of mine, which has got the conclusion that many upper Assam samples are equally competent as compared to the Manipur samples. They have got almost the similar kind of the chemistry and the phytochemical composition in them. And also these land races have more protein content. Also definitely the Manipur ones have got the better phytochemical composition and the bioactive composition, but Assam varieties did follow that. And and there was one more finding: as the altitude increases throughout the Assam, right from we go from higher to lower, from the Kokrajhar to the Tinsukia side or from Barak Valley, as the altitude increases, the anthocyanin content also increases. So the quality, or you can say the bioactive composition, also increases in that. And also I will also try to look into the reference base, the genomic and the transcriptomic side of it. If you see here, these are the famous few recipes which is prepared in Northeast India to in various events. If we see Chubichi here, this is one of the fermented rice drink. It is very common in Meitei community of Manipur. You all have heard about, might have heard about the Manipur conflict. There was two communities, Methi and Kuki. So in one of the communities, it is very popular. And then there is kheer, chira pudding, tekeli pitha, firni, utong chak, and til pitha. These pithas are usually like prepared in the Bihu celebrations. So the Assamese have 3 different type of Bihu celebrations, and in these they prepare that. So he is one of the farmer and one of the pioneers of Assam black rice cultivation. He is Upendra Rabha, and he is also a recipient of Assam Gaurav Awards in 2024. And he has a very sustainable home. He have from farm rearing to the fields and to exotic plants, everything he has in his home. He says he hardly goes to market. So you see, like from him, many of the farmers got inspired. Around 200 to 300 farmers he inspired, and they are now also cultivating black rice in their own region. So this is the farm I visited to. He have 3 varieties which is named after him. Upendra Rabha 1, Upendra Rabha 2, they are all black rice. Another farmer is Postpangam Devkanta. I've got seeds from him. I have not visited his farms personally, but he has. His seeds is the ones which is a GI tag, which has also contributed in the GI tag, which is Chakao Poreton. And he has also preserved not just rice. He has preserved so many traditional crops, and he has also inspired so many farmers across the Manipur. So these 2 farmers are known as the pioneers of black rice community in the northeast. And he has held more than 165 types of varieties there. So here in this study, you see that the economic profitability of the black rice was studied by Goswami and the colleagues. So here we can see that they have concluded that the per kg cost of production of paddy comes down to 32 rupees. Whereas the per kg cost of production of milled rice comes to 49 rupees. And this is not even half of the price you get for if you sell the rice in the market. Because if you see the market, it is all like every time it is over like 150 rupees to 300 rupees per kg. Like this is the minimum you can get. 150 rupees per kg is the minimum you can get for black rice. So these are the main players can be in the value chain of the black rice, right from the private sectors, NGOs, organizations, and ICR Institute and the government initiatives. We can link them all along so that we can bring the black rice of Manipur from the 4th position to a better position in the global map. And the conclusions are we need to work on the various our strength, on our weaknesses and threats, which are the yield constraints, the land specificity, limited awareness, market challenges, and the climate variability. We can work upon them, and we can strengthen our strength and opportunities to get a better outcome of black rice. Thank you.
Thanks, Rubeka. I think it was fascinating that a similar variety of rice or the same variety of rice can have such different trajectories in 2 different states.
Yes.
And also, thank you for suggesting a constructive way forward,
Yes.
Both in terms of innovation and value addition.
Yes.
So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
If I could now invite Santa for her presentation on how rice is such an integral part of the cultural fabric of different tribes in Odisha.
I think first I would like to thank Rachit for laying down the groundwork for me because he already spoke about some parts about the communities in Odisha. I'm Shanta. I'm also from Bhubaneswar, Odisha. And I would just like to say that 10 minutes, it's going to be very short to talk about all the communities that I have covered because homogenizing communities is a very dangerous thing, considering Odisha has already been overlooked in a lot of aspects when it comes to its culture, especially coastal narratives and more religious narratives, dominating its whether it's the culinary cultures or any other aspects of it. And secondly, I chose not to use photographs, which even though I was part of the field while engaging with the communities, because I thought, what if there was no camera with me and I just went to engage and I observed. So most of my visuals have come from more like of a diary entry where I've kind of tried to sketch it. But yeah, since I'm not so good at sketching, so I took assistance of my friend who's also in the audience to help me kind of imagine those spaces for me. If we look at, there's always been dispute about what is the origin. Is there a singular origin of rice in the world? And that has always been put up for dispute. As we saw, ma'am showed us in the presentation that there were like around 10 spaces of where rice could have originated. It could have been from China, it could have been from Odisha or UP. And if we even take the term Odisha, so it's actually made up of two words called Udra and Desha, which is basically, Udra was a hilly tribe, and the meaning is land of cultivators. So back then there were these two classes of cultivators. One is Odas and then this Chaso. So Odas is referring to the hills and Chaso is a more generic term for cultivator. So there's a lot of archaeobotanic evidences that kind of suggests that already 4,000 years from now, there was presence of wild rice cultivation, Oriza nivara, which I think is there already in the exhibition that you can actually go and see. And there was this combination of wetland and dryland rice. One is like a form where you directly sow the rice without any transplantation. And the other is where you kind of grow all these nursery beds, and then you kind of transplant those lands. So somewhere between 2500 BC to 2000 BC, there were these presence of these Austroasiatic groups, speaking groups, which has its very common linguistic features with Southeast Asia, with which Odisha shares a huge historic maritime trading routes. So there is a lot of speculation that already there were tribes that were existing in Odisha long before the Aryan migration even happened. So the caste system and even the religious connotations being associated with rice came much later when the migration, the Aryan migration happened, and there was already presence of, Anshuman? This disappeared. Sorry. So that was already there. And that's why in Odisha there's this patch in Koraput district which is called the Jaipur Tract, which is actually considered as one of those origin points of Asian cultivated rice, which we today see as Oriza sativa. So for now, I have come across, at least with my understanding of information, there are around 1,400 plus rice varieties in Odisha, and we are still counting because these tribes that we are talking about, these particularly vulnerable tribal groups, there are 13 such groups in Odisha, even though we have 62 tribal groups that kind of constitute 10% of the country's population. But I'm specifically focusing on the PVTG groups. They are very heterogeneous with very unique cultural and socio-political dimensions, and they're scattered across 16 to 17 districts in Odisha. I was able to at least cover the western and the southern part of Odisha, and these were some of the names of the rice that I could come by engaging with the communities and the farmers. But I know that there are even much more higher number of rice because it's so localized and it is so kind of hidden. Even though for good reasons or bad reasons, because it's very difficult to kind of keep a track of these rice varieties that still exist. Through my engagement with the communities, which is Dongria Kondha, then we have Lanji Saora. So these are some of the tribes with whom I kind of had an opportunity to engage with, to understand that rice is not just about a point of consumption. It's also about deeply being woven into, the cycle of life and death. And if you look at it, even our cycle, our rice cycle, the agricultural cycle also runs kind of in a way from April to March. I don't know, financial year existed long before even this actually came into place. So in April, May, we have these festivals, Chaita Parab, which is talking about sowing new seeds for the new year. So you basically worshipping the seeds and you're taking approval from your deities, and then you kind of prepare it, preparing it for the long duration rice that kind of lasts for over 6 months. So rice has its duration anytime between 60 to 180 days. Some are early maturing, some are late maturing, and all of them have very different purposes. All of them have very different consumption habits. And first it comes to the ceremonial preparation of rice, and then it comes to in the June and the July, which is actually the transplantation season and the weeding season. You kind of is the most crucial part where you're trying to protect the field from any kind of mortality or any kind of insects and pests basically. And even if you can just see at the top, I've written these different rice varieties that I used in the worship or even the food consumption. And for every cycle, there's a different kind of rice that is being considered, whether it's in the form of food or whether it is offering to the ancestors or even for the preparation of rice beer. So the weeding and then the tillering and then marking new rice varieties for next season, and then washing of the agricultural tools and worshipping cattle during the October, November, which is Dashera and Diwali in the Hindu calendar. And then of course the most crucial part is the Nuakhai. Basically this is the new rice eating ceremony. So a lot of communities, they cultivate these small duration rice which lasts for only for 60 to 80 days, and by September, that once that is out, they kind of eat that rice, and then they also kind of preserve it for the next season, and they offer it to the ancestors as well. So this is an entire cycle which is completely centered around rice. If we look at the seed preservation and storage, women farmers especially are very much involved in that task, where they kind of thresh it by hand so as not to destroy the embryo or the seeds, to kind of store it in the longer run. Generally, they either, like in today's times, a lot of people use bullocks or even feet threshing, but to keep it in a very delicate condition, so they kind of use their hands to kind of thresh it. And then there are these different ways, like some use bamboo containers that are lined with mud and cow dung, or even gourd containers. And that is the paddy seeds are treated with dry neem or karanja powder, or even ash also, because a lot of these communities practice shifting cultivation. So in a lot of ways, they kind of burn the area or the branches or the twigs, and the ash that comes out of it is considered as a good fertilizer for the soil. And so they use that ash also to kind of mix it with the paddy seeds to preserve it. And in Kutia Kandha tribe, there's a very unique thing. So they use, rather, instead of just preserving paddy, so they also try to preserve other seeds. So when it comes to green gram, so they kind of pack it inside a polythene bag, and then they pack it inside paddy straw, so that the insects or any kind of pests don't reach to the green gram, and it is kind of protected by the paddy straw itself. And even if you can see the drawing that we have made, is dry paddy straws are also woven into thick ropes and form these like basket-like structures to store. And they're actually hanged from the rooftop near where the deities are present inside their house to kind of protect it. And I've tried to focus on 5 to 8 rice varieties, which I kind of try to understand. So one of the most common rice is called Matti Dhana. It's basically a red rice, and it's very interesting. If you would hear, like as in Bengali culture, we have ki hum sab cheez khate hain. But in Odisha, if you come and see engage with the communities when it comes to rice and consuming it, it's like rice hum peete hain. Because in earlier times, when there was scarcity of rice production, so a lot of them would kind of boil it in water, so it would become a very thick porridge, whether it is ragi or whether it's millets or even rice. And so they would kind of consume it by drinking it. So that's why a lot of people say ki hum chawal peete hain, ya chawal, which is called mand or peja. We say it in Odia. So Matti Dhana is very common for making this porridge. It's also used for poha, like rice flakes, as we say, or chuda we say in Odia. And also it's very famous for making the rice beer handia, which we, I found this rice in Koraput region. Then there's another one specifically used for this Nua Khai festival, which is a new rice eating. It's a short duration variety called Paradhana. It's also used for barter, which Rachit had pointed out that aaj bhi if you go to the hearts, you would try to kind of exchange that in exchange for some other things. This Paradhana is very useful rice in the community. Then we have sapuri, which is a slightly aromatic rice. It's very good for making pulaus and payasams, and also it is used for making these two kinds of rice. One is the puffed rice, which is mudhi, and then there's this liya or khoi that he was talking, when somebody dies and you throw this popped rice into the fire, it's kind of respecting, or also talking about this cyclic nature of life and death. And then pimpuri basa, it's right outside in the exhibition. You would get to see these very small grained rice, which actually resembles so pimpuri means ants. So you would also kind of get to see the resemblance with the the structure with the insects. So a lot of these rice also takes its attributes from the way it looks, or even the way it tastes, or way the colors are. And then of course umaria chudi is a coarse rough rice which is used for making again chuda, and it is again used for these festival in the communities, especially in the April May, where they're talking about sowing new rice. I would not go too much into this because I think in a way when Rachit had asked the question, a lot of people were already acquainted. But then one very unique thing that I kind of got to find, which I kind of shared, is about the notion of drinking rice instead of eating it. And then of course it's either cooked as that, or it is also cooked with a lot of leafy vegetables, which is a very fascinating thing that nobody, even though we are acquainted with a couple of with a couple of leafy vegetable varieties, but I was so mind blown, just to know that there are 50 varieties of leafy green vegetables that and you can only find it if you just go and forage in the forests, which is a declining culture in today's times, as we are looking more forward towards supplying rice and other grains and other form of monopolizing a lot of food culture. So that practice of foraging in the forest is kind of declining. Apart from consumption, we also use rice powder to make rangoli, and we mix it with water to make chitta, which is basically, you can see all these white patterned paintings that are done on walls. And when agar Thursday aata hai, so it's like Lakshmi Puja hoti hai kahin pe, for new ceremonial rites. So we kind of make these artworks with which depicts either some harvesting cycles, or even it talks about life and death, or any other ceremonies, even during weddings. And these long white grains are also used as rice hangers to kind of ward off evil, evil eyes, and also are adorned on cattle during cattle worship. And even in postnatal practices, when there's a newborn, so they are also applied a mixture of castor oil and paddy husk, jo ek general hum tel lagate hain to make the baby's bone strong, but in their culture also they use castor oil and paddy husk to kind of to massage the babies. And also these mothers consume dried rice, and they're prevented to take any kind of fermented rice during after their pregnancy. And I'll just touch upon one magico-religious practices. It's very interesting that they use rice to kind of resolve land disputes. Like they take an earthen stove where they put these two chickens with a lot of these unhusked paddy, and they kind of seal it. And in the next day, if both the chickens are alive, the land is kind of divided equally. But if one of the chicken dies consuming paddy, that corresponding party from the village loses, and then the land dispute goes over to the other party. So this is very interesting to see these three kind of rices that are used also in these magical religious practices, whether it's naming ceremonies, or even trying to understand whether this land is appropriate for, is an auspicious site or not. And in the end, which is the most interesting part, which I kind of discovered while exploring these rices, that in Orissa, a lot of these names of these rices are very much attributed to their geographical origin or their cultural heritage. Like, for example, if I take Sunakhilo, so Sunakhilo is referring to the earring, the backside of the earring, which is a very thin structure. So the rice also looks like that. So if you look at all these different, there are like 1,400 rice varieties with different names, but I don't know what it actually means, but those are like musical notes, kind of would give a lot of glimpse into the past of your history about who we are as humans and how we look at as a rice. So this is a very fascinating thing that I don't know, even it's also attributed to animals. Like there are rice which are known as elephants or prawns or lizards, but we don't know why they are named like that. So this is a very interesting topic that nobody has delved into, but this is definitely gonna give a lot of insights into the origins of who we are as a human civilization. Thank you. Yeah.
As I said, the illustrations that you did and your friend did really added another layer to the storytelling. I would like to ask Charmaine about just her views on how research-based storytelling or research-based papers, just ways of making them engaging, the narrative engaging. Just your thoughts on that.
Oh, so just a few comments. I think just listening, if you want to make it engaging, someone was asking me, we're talking about if you want to just do academic work, that's fine. We're not, that's about taking human beings out of it and making it as dry as possible. You think about what's unique. And in fact, what you're saying then is you save the most interesting part for last, pull the most interesting part to the start, like, pull it up to the top, because that's what you want to engage people, so you can do that. I think it's absolutely fine to put your own experiences in it. People relate to stories about people. You don't have to do that, but if you want to. And the other thing, I'm here for the next, day. If anybody wants to come and talk to me about their work, I'm happy to talk to you. But one thing I would say is if you want to write well, you have to read well. So, you can learn from, and I include, even if you want to write non-fiction about food, you can read fiction and you can learn from that. So being a good writer, I listened to an interview yesterday with a Pulitzer Prize winning writer, and he said it took him 30 painful years to be a good writer. So it's an ongoing process. I'm going to write for the rest of my life. I'm going to hopefully get better and better at it every time. But I'll leave now because I know we've got time. But please come and talk to me over the day tomorrow if you're here, if you'd like to ask me anything.
Thank you so much. And with that, we conclude our panel.